Let's bring in Ryan Mauro. He's a national security analyst with the Clarion project. And Ryan, can we draw a connection between ISIS's troubles in the Middle East and these homegrown attacks that seem to be increasing in Europe?
Sure. I don't know that the inspiring of attacks in the West is necessarily a new strategy, but what you're seeing happen is that normally the obligation, as it was taught by ISIS, was for people to go to the Caliphate, and the recruits wanted to go there because they viewed it as this type of Sharia Disneyland on earth. They thought it was a wonderful place to be, but now they are recognizing that that's not a place that they want to be, that it is crumbling, and ISIS has said, look, if you think you're going to get intercepted, don't bother. Carry out attacks near where you live. It's not worth the risk, and then you lose your chance to go to paradise dying in jihad if you get arrested. So the connection there would be that terrorists are seeing opportunities elsewhere that are greater for success rather than actually going to the Caliphate and joining their forces.
And that change in tactics or change in strategy, encouraging them to carry out homegrown attacks, that poses, I would imagine, new challenges for counterintelligence agencies both in Europe and, in fact, around the world.
That's right, because before, we would arrest a lot of ISIS supporters as they were planning to go to Syria. And when they show up at the airport, you go and you arrest them. And so we were lucky, for lack of a better word, that they would be trying to go overseas rather than carry out an attack inside the United States or inside Europe. But that calculus has now changed now that they recognize that it's too risky to try to go to the Caliphate, and also they'll get more glory for themselves if they carry out an attack in the West. So the hope is that as the Caliphate crumbles, then there will just be less attraction for people to buy into ISIS propaganda, because although the jihadist mindset has been there for a long time, you did see this dramatic spike in terror plots once the Caliphate was declared, even though it's not a particularly popular caliphate.
And Ryan, what do you make of the jihadist groups that seem to be popping up or taking advantage, I suppose, of some troubles in the Philippines?
Yeah, I'm very concerned about that. I'm concerned that the government of the Philippines, in their fight against ISIS, will become too aggressive, because look at their leader. He's not exactly the most sane guy on earth. And if they are too aggressive, then you can see a union of various jihadists that normally wouldn't work together. And you could also see those that are dormant, radical but dormant, saying, well, now it is time for jihad. Now we are required because the circumstances have changed. We're seeing Muslims being killed in the streets, and now we're obligated to do what we previously thought was a time of peace and to advance through nonviolent means.
And then I got to ask you about the United States, because every time there's, we see the video from the Philippines or we see the terror attacks in Europe, there is that constant question, is this coming to the United States? And I've heard some analysts say, no, probably not, both because of the distance, but also because the Muslim community in general in the United States is better integrated and perhaps happier being part of this country than some of the Muslims in the communities in Europe. Is that a fair assessment?
The threat is less in the United States, but it's very easy to carry out an act of terror, and I would be shocked if someone doesn't try to carry out an act of violent jihad in the U.S. before the end of Ramadan. Keep in mind that one of the spiritual leaders of ISIS, one of the main guys inspiring people to join ISIS, currently does so from his home in Michigan in the United States. One of the attackers at the London Bridge was a big fan of his, constantly watching his YouTube sermons. So we do have radicals in the United States of the worst kind that are radicalizing people all around the world, so you have to assume that they are doing the same in the United States as well.
Ryan Mauro is a national security analyst with the Clarion project. Ryan, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Got it.